Wait. All right, so we have our presenter, the 12th presenter with the paper ID of IN22-122 with the paper title, a correlational study between learning strategy, learning anxiety, and learning motivation based on Chinese junior high school English learning. So I hope I pronounced your name properly, Ziyi Jiao. All right. Okay.
Yes, that's me.
All right. So you're from the Department of Education, Asia Pacific International University, Thailand. If you're ready, can you please begin your presentation?
Okay. Could you see the PowerPoint right now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Ziyi Jiao, as the hoster just told everybody. And my topic is a correlational study between learning strategy, learning anxiety, and learning motivation. First, I should introduce the background of my study. Because we are living in a world of English as a free lingua, that we use English to communicate around the world. And as Crystal investigated, beyond 85% of international organizations or institutions have accepted English as their official language for communication, and 85% of the films and the markets use English. Also, 90% of the published academic article are written in English as well. And one more, the Chinese Ministry of Education has chosen English as the only second language to teach mandatorily from elementary school to higher education. So that's the background of my study. And the rationale to doing my study was also 2 points. The first is the tendency of education has shifted from concentrating on teachers to students. That is, individual differences in learning have received more and more attention. Yeah, that's the first. And the second, in Chinese compulsory education English curriculum standard, it requires teachers to consciously and purposefully help students to form their own learning strategies at junior high school level, which is grade 7 to grade 9 in Chinese context. And on this basis, teachers are expected to reduce students' learning anxiety and improve students' learning efficiency and develop their abilities to learn independently. So the aims of my study is quite simple, is to investigate the use of English learning strategy among junior high school students, as well as the types of learning motivation and level of anxiety. Moreover, trying to explore and enrich the relationship between those 3 factors in English class. So based on the aims of my study, my research objects has 5 points. The first one is identify the English learning strategy that students use. The second is identify the level of students' learning anxiety. The third is identify the types of students' learning motivation. And the fourth is to trying to find the differences by grade level and gender among those 3 variables I mentioned. And the last objective is identify the relationship between learning strategy, learning motivation, and learning anxiety. According to Oxford, learning strategy is the action, behavior, or techniques that students use in order to promote second language learning, and that learners are conscious of in most situations. And I choose to investigate the choice of strategies. The choice of strategies depends on individual learning differences as well as situational factors. The learner differences include belief about language learning, emotional states, learning experiences, and learning factors as age, ability, learning style, and motivation. And the situational factor include task performance, the environment, and the target language. Also, gender differences is another factor that I investigated. A number of studies have revealed that male use fewer strategies than females, but other findings do not confirm these findings. They found that it's quite balanced between males and females, or even some state that males use learning strategies more frequently than females. And next, for learning anxiety, it is complex and involves both emotional and behavior in relation to the language learning process. And it can be derived from inside and outside. For example, inside anxiety maybe originate from language learners' belief about the language, and maybe also how a learner perceives himself or herself, either in a language learning context or in the face of other learners. And for the external anxiety, comes from how learners perceive their teachers, teaching method, and test. Next, for the effects on learning, most scholars have found that anxiety can hinder the ability to learn. However, Scoville and Oxford found that there is a positive effect on English learning process, that is, proper learning anxiety will enhance learning. And lastly, for the third variable of my study is learning motivation. It is a degree of efforts in the process of learning a foreign language when people are willing to promote themselves by means of learning knowledge. And also, most of the scholars think that learning motivation can directly promote academic achievement, but some disagrees. Also, regarding to gender differences in learning motivation, some scholars have found that male learners have relatively higher motivation, than females. But of course, in some studies, the results are opposite, that the females may be higher motivated than males. And about the relationship between learning strategy and learning anxiety, I conclude in this sentence, there is a negative relationship between them, but there is also a gap that just a few of them were conducted in junior high schools. Most of the studies are conducted in high school, senior high school level and tutoring level. For the relationship between learning strategy and learning motivation, the results are positive. However, the findings indicate that in diverse situations, different types of strategies can have different relationships with motivation. So after after review of the variables, the methodology that I use, the survey design that I use is cross-sectional, and it is a quantitative research. For the participants, after I collect all the data, 269 students will participate in my survey. and the demographic characters were in the table. And you can see most of the participants, I mean 6% of the participants are male and 40% are female, and almost 40% are ninth graders. And the instruments I used were learning strategies that designed by Oxford, and it has 50 items. And learning anxiety questionnaire is designed by Howitz. It has 33 items. And learning motivation is designed by Biggis. It has only 10 items. And the analyze I used are quite simple. There are three. Discrete data to calculate the mean and standard deviation for the items. And t-test was conducted to determine if there were differences between, based on grade level and genders. Of course, Pearson correlation were used to assess the relationship. So I just combined the fourth objects into the first three objectives. Like I explain English learning strategies that student use, and also answers the differences by grade level and gender. So here is the analysis of my data. First is the English learning strategy use and differences. I highlighted the data in red. That is most important for my analysis. So as we can see that not only for strategy, but for the subscale of learning strategy, it has 6 subscales, also around 3. So it says that the students' strategy use is quite neutral. And I use one-way ANOVA to test the differences. I only found that by use of compensation strategy, grade 7 and grade 9 has a significant differences. And for the t-test, I'm doing a t-test to trying to find the differences between males and females. So there are 2 strategies that has significant differences between males and females, which are compensation strategy and social strategy. For levels of English learning anxiety and differences, most of the students has medium anxiety, which is, you see here, around 89% of the students. And no differences was found by grade level and gender. For the third question, types of English learning motivation and differences, we can see that motivation is only 2.88, and for the 2 subscale of the motivation, also around 3. So it's quite neutral. And for the t-test, I just found there is a differences between male and female in the use of surface motivation. And lastly, the Pearson correlation. It is really significant that all those 3 variables have positive correlation, and strategies. The correlation between strategy and motivation has the highest correlation from my data. So I'm trying to construct a SEM of those 3 variables, but after I construct the model, I found that the CMINDF is higher than 3, and RFI is lower than 0.9. So the data tells me the model is not acceptive. So by observing the path from anxiety to strategy is only negative 0.08, is quite lower. And from anxiety to motivation is just 0.24. So I think I should like erase these two paths. So I have a revised SEM. So based on this model, I found that the model is quite acceptable, and the table tells me when students have a deep motivation, DM means deep motivation here, will apply, you see, memory strategy, cognitive strategy, and metacognitives more. So based on the analysis I have, the discussion will separate into 4 points. For the first one, what I found is junior high students employ learning strategy with a neutral level. So I have discussed into 2 points. Most of the scholar agrees that in Chinese context, students the frequency of students' learning strategy is not high. This is likely due to the certain limitations such as lack of strategy awareness, improper use of strategy. This is especially the case with students who are poor at using social and affective strategy. Also regarding to the gender differences, male students use learning strategies more frequently than female students. This finding is inconsistent with the conclusion of almost all previous studies that I found. Though through the investigation, the male students have relatively higher achievement in English than female in my target school. So that is a probable reason to explain these findings. And the second, that is students have experienced medium anxiety in English learning. The result is same as the findings from Do, and there is also differences with the results obtained by Wang. The possible reason for this finding may be because my sample is investigated in a small city, and only one school was selected, and as a result of the data, it relatively closed. Moreover, the school is a top-ranked private school in local area, which has its own foreign teachers on campus, and the student's family financial background is relatively superior. That's maybe the reasons. And the third finding is overall level of learning motivation is neutral in junior high stage. And there are 2 findings.
Okay, can you wrap up in 1 minute?
Okay. Yeah. I can jump. I will jump this point, and maybe the fourth point is there are positive correlation between learning strategy and learning anxiety. That's the fun. So after those findings, my suggestions will be based on these 4 findings. So as guiding students to make efficient use of learning strategy, teacher could raise students aware of importance of the learning strategies. And of course, emphasize that learning strategy can be adjusted and amended in accordance with different tasks. Meanwhile, female students need more support in the use of learning strategies. And with respect to the learning anxiety, I think the current teaching methods and the environment are adequate for students to learn English. And in terms to the medium learning motivation, English teachers should be aware of that they should help students to set up achievement learning goals at junior stage. Of course, especially for female students, that the students will have lasting motivation to learn. And lastly, to foster the use of memory, cognitive, and metacognitive strategy will help students to generate deep motivation, which could fulfill the requirements from MOE. And the limitation of my study are four listed in a sentence in this page. The most important limitation I want to mention is the last one, that I think if want to emphasize my data to have more convincible, a clockwise approach can be adopted to identify the exactly changes. That is how the students change from grade 7 to grade 9. And so I can have a more concurrent data to apply in education areas. That's all the content of my study. Thank you.
Can you turn on your microphone, Dr. Shamini?
Sorry, I forgot.
Okay.
Yes, I'll have to repeat. Okay, so thank you very much, Ziyi, for I think I've done a very extensive research. Very deep. But let me open up to the other members to see if they have any inquiries. So they would like to share their views or maybe suggestions on your research.
Okay, maybe not, Dr. Shamini.
Then maybe not. So just that.
One small question from me.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, okay.
It's about the learning anxiety. You can give us the brief definition of it. The anxiety to learn, or when they learn, they have the anxiety of something.
Oh, your question means the learning anxiety in my research. What does the anxiety means, right?
Yeah.
That is the anxiety when students learning English.
In learning English.
Yeah.
In which way?
In which way? Like both, like when they may have the anxiety about the test. They may have the anxiety of negative from others, negative evaluation from others. So that's
in negative ways, what you're gonna say, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I just wonder, you have done the correlation, and I think this is the negative, only one negative item there.
Yeah, I didn't mention this part, Ms. Panda, because anxiety in most, I can say most of the research that has a negative correlation with strategies. Yeah, but in my study, I found there is a positive correlation. Yeah, so.
It means that they don't have anxiety?
No, the possible reason for my research, I think, is most of the students have a medium anxiety. That is like the Oxford and Skull found that proper anxiety may be enhanced learning. So that's what I found, but I didn't mention this point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, thank you, Ziyi. Thank you, Dr. Supinda. So I guess Achanoparat, we will proceed with the final presenter, okay, for this evening or this afternoon.